So hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to record a basic podcast using VDO.Ninja. This is a simple introductory guide, let's call it. It's not going to cover everything, it's just to get you started. Okay, now there's lots of ways to record a podcast with VDO.Ninja. However, we're going to focus on using a basic room and OBS in this case. So to get started, we are going to click Create a Room. Assuming we're using a password, we can pretty much use any room name we want. So we'll use a password to avoid conflicts later. Now I'm going to assume if you are creating a podcast, you're probably also participating in the podcast. So we are going to click the director will be performing as well. Now, if you didn't click this, you'd be just directing. You wouldn't show up in group scenes, essentially. So make sure you click that. And we'll enter the room. Now, this is your control center. On the top left, you'll see invite a guest. And on the right, you'll see capture a group scene. Two links. One lets you invite a guest or guests into the room. And the other is used for outputting video as a group scene into OBS. We'll use both of them to set up this podcast. The invite link by default is good to go. It has some safe defaults, but knowing you want high quality for your podcast. So we'll click Customize and we will click Pro Audio Mode. A little tooltip here. This disables echo cancellation, noise reduction, and turns off auto gain. So if your guest isn't wearing headphones and they don't have a good microphone that's gained incorrectly and they're in a noisy room, turning this on might be a bad idea. So make sure that if you are using this, you have a good setup on both your end and the guest's end. Otherwise, you might want to leave this off. But having it on, you'll get higher fidelity. You'll get raw sound. It will sound less like a telephone call. You'll notice that when I turn it on, it adds a little URL parameter to the invite link. Now the S is an alias, a short form for the Pro Audio parameter. The documentation has a list of hundreds of these URL parameters that you can add to the invite link to enable different settings. You need to understand that VDO.Ninja isn't a server-side application. Like there's no user accounts. There's nothing that's being stored on the server in terms of settings. Anytime you want to change a setting, it's a client-side setting. So when you want to send an invite link to a guest that has a bunch of these settings applied to it, the settings are embedded in the invite link itself. So as we add these parameters or turn on these options, it's adding parameters to the URL. You can manually edit the URL parameter by edit and just manually adding additional options. And that's how I suppose VDO.Ninja is intended to be used. However, for those getting started, I have a collection of some of the more common options listed out as toggles. It does the work for you, but over time you might want to learn how to add them yourself manually. Now, other ones here you might want to enable by default. Ask a user for a name when they join the room. You might want to show names. If you want higher quality video, you can enable that. If you have a bunch of guests with good quality computers, enabling that. The default at the moment is 720p capture. Let's say show guests tip on joining. Now there's another couple popular options here. There's stream via server. This enables Meshcast mode. This sends the video through a server. It's useful for guests that don't have good internet. However, the default peer-to-peer is recommended if you can. Lower latency, less reliance on servers. There's also a show director's video only mode called broadcast mode. It enables broadcast mode, which the guests only see the output from a director. In this case, you might want to share the output of OBS with the guests. I'm not going to go into those options in more detail. I have other YouTube videos already touching on it. So you can search for Meshcast on YouTube. You can also search for broadcast mode on YouTube. I'll link the description. I'll link to those videos in the video description below. Yeah, I already covered those topics, so I won't cover them here. Okay, cool. So now we have an invite link, and I'm going to invite a couple guests. In this case, I'm just going to fake it and open these tabs in a new browser. The idea here is you would send this invite link to a guest via email or SMS, Slack, whatever. They would need to open the link in Chrome, preferably, in a primary browser for it to work best. But I do support most browsers. You'll notice that it asks us for a display name, and it's also giving us a little message here saying tips on how to get the best quality. Our URL parameters for tips and label worked. And we can select a camera. Wrong camera. Boom. Boom. Okay, I've joined as a guest. And now as a director, you'll see that the guest appears in our control center as a control box. All the options are here. I can control. I can say blind, for example. Now the guest is blind. I can turn their video off. In this case, it's muted. I can unmute it, and now it will resume. Lots of options here. Okay. Cool. Let's add another guest. Guest 2. Oops. I entered the password wrong. Password. Guest 2. Join. There we go. Now, as a guest, you can see that I can see the label of other guests in the room, which is kind of nice. And as a director, I can see both guests with their own control window. I can change the guest's name in the top corner here, and that's reflected automatically. Okay, now the next step, pretty straightforward. I realize OBS is complicated for a lot of people. However, we are going to be using it in this case. I have OBS open here. There we go. Here we go. We have OBS open. We are going to say plus browser. We're going to call this a group scene. Now we want to paste our URL in here that we copied and pasted, plus change the width and height to whatever we intend to be publishing at, in this case 1920 by 1080. And then it's very important to click Control Audio via OBS. This lets us capture the audio into OBS. If you forget to click this, you will not be recording audio. So big mistake, do not click that. Don't click anything else. None of these others, don't touch those other settings. Just make sure Control Audio is clicked. And I put in the wrong link. I put it in the wrong link. Let me go back. I'll copy the group scene link. Paste that in there. And now it loads up. If you put in the guest link, you get a password question. Okay, cool. it's working. We now see the guests in OBS, 2 of them. Now we're not included because we haven't joined the room as well yet. So let's jump back in and do that for us. Okay, we are here. Now, as a director, our speakers are muted by default. It's a little bit odd, but there's good reason for it. We unmute our speaker, and now we can enable our microphone and camera. Okay. By default, we join with the default microphone and camera, but we click this little gear icon, and we can change our camera and microphone if we need to from there. Now, if you don't see yourself showing up in a control box as well, this is you, a director or performer. If you don't see this, it's probably because you forgot to set the room in show director mode, where the director is also a performer. It's not the end of the world. If you forgot that and you intend to use the group scene links, you can customize this and say, include a director. And it will add show director to your scene link. And then when you use this link in OBS, it will show you. Anyways, let's check on OBS. Look, we're there. We're the OBS virtual camera, but that represents the director in this case. Yeah, and now we are getting the audio and all the guests. And if you're familiar with OBS, you can now record, stop, start, go live in the corner there. Cool. What's next? Okay, well, that works, but some people might want more control. More control. So if you want to not use the group scene link, you want more control, you might want to have each individual guest recorded. We can try using solo links instead. You'll notice at the bottom, each guest has a solo link. So we'll click copy solo link. We'll go back to OBS. We will delete the group scene link since we don't want that. We want instead to have each guest as their own browser source. So we'll call this guest 1. We'll paste in our guest link there. 1920, 1080. Control audio via OBS. Boom. Guest 1 shows up here. Let's resize them down, place them here. Let's go back. We'll copy the link for guest 2. Same thing. Plus browser guest 2. Copy the link in 1920 by 1080. Control audio via OBS. Guest joins, we'll resize it. And then last but not least, we can add ourselves. Okay, guest 3. Yeah. Cool. Sweet. Now, let's say we wanted to show a label of the guest. We can use URL parameters, and we can say show labels. That's an option to show the label of the guest. And now you can see the video shows the guest's label in the bottom left. If we want to increase the bitrate of this guest, we can say bitrate equals 6,000. The default is like around 3 megabits per second or roughly. Now we've just increased it to 6 megabits per second. So we have a higher quality bitrate now coming in for that particular guest. We can move them around, customize the layout in OBS. We can also see that each guest has its own audio meter. So we can mute one guest, we can change the volume, the gain, add effects in OBS per guest, which is kind of cool. We can also install a plugin, Source Record plugin for OBS. This plugin you can install for OBS, and it will let you record each source in OBS as its own video. So if you install this plugin, each video can be recorded to its own video. So you would have the main mix, and then you could have each individual guest recorded individually. That will let you post-process the video if you need to, which is kind of cool. The Source Record plugin does require quite a lot of computing power. It can stress out some computers. And OBS sometimes has problems with audio when your computer is maxed out. So I would say if you're using a podcast, doing a podcast, try to limit the CPU load on your computer. Start OBS in administrator mode. Try to reduce the CPU load. Have a good computer to avoid any audio clicking issues and disruption on that front. Okay. Now, all pretty good. There are some common questions I get. When you're in a director mode, how do you kind of see it as a guest? Well, you can click this little window pane icon here, and it will let you, as a director, preview the room as if you were a guest as well. So you can toggle into that mode if you feel more comfortable interacting with people in that way. So as a director, you can still have that guest experience. Another problem is, as a director, if you're using solo links, every time a guest joins, their solo link changes. This view link, it might say view equals some stream ID value, some 7-character value. That's going to change each time. And that's because if the guest joins with this invite link, it's going to automatically assign them a new stream ID every time they open it. But if you notice when the guest joins, it automatically adds the stream ID to their URL. So as a guest, once you join the room, you could bookmark it. And then as a guest, you just have to open the bookmark each time, and it will load your stream. So it will reuse the existing push ID because it's there. That relies on the guests kind of being aware of that. So what might be better is to prefabricate URLs for each guest. So as a director, you can just add push equals guest 1, right? And now this link you can give to guest 1. You can then edit it and say guest 2, and then give this to the second guest. A guest needs a unique stream ID, so the push value has to be unique for every guest. As long as you're using a room password, it doesn't matter what the stream ID is. It just has to be unique for that room. If you're not using a password, it needs to be globally unique. So that's why I recommend you use a password. You can use any sort of push ID, any sort of stream ID value then. If a guest joins a room and that stream ID is already taken by someone else, they'll be kicked out of the room saying it's already in use. So just be careful. One way to manage this is, as a director, copy the base invite link to, let's say, Excel, Google Sheets, or something like that, and create custom links for each guest. Prefabricate all the settings, all the things you want for each guest. Make sure you organize it, and now you know which link each guest has. When they join, they will always join with the same stream ID, and that means they will always auto appear in their solo link within your OBS. So anytime they join, they'll automatically appear in OBS. You don't even need to be in the directories room at that point. You can just join as a normal invite if you wanted to. Now, another way of doing it that's even more advanced is there's third-party services that are link shorteners. So one example is short.io. You can put all the links into there, give them names, and then give each guest a short URL. You can put a password on that link. You put all these restrictions on that short URL. But more importantly is you can change the VDO.Ninja link that short URL forwards to anytime you want. So you can send a guest a short URL, and after they get it, if you decide to change that link week to week, you can, and not need to worry about sending the guests a new link. So VDO.Ninja doesn't offer server-side services. It doesn't have a short linking service that requires user accounts and things like that. So if you want a server-side tool to manage links, check out something like short.io to manage those links. Anytime a guest joins, they can just reuse their push ID. Now I'll note one last thing, and that is if you are doing a podcast, try to have multiple recordings. Having just one recording isn't a good idea. OBS, as much as I love it, especially with audio, sometimes has problems. So always have a second recording. It often is a good idea to maybe have the guests themselves record their audio, perhaps their video if you can. VDO.Ninja has an option built into it. Google Drive recording, for example. When the guest joins, you can click this button, and the guest will upload a copy of their video then to Google Drive. So it's a secondary backup of the recording. I have another YouTube video talking about all the different recording options you can do. Check it out. I'll link it in the description as well. But even just having the guest recording their audio with like Audacity locally is an option. So just be safe, have a backup. Don't rely on just OBS for your recordings. Don't rely on just VDO.Ninja for your recordings. You can use both together. You can use third-party applications, but I would recommend, if you're doing a podcast, to have backups. Okay, I think that covers the basics. I'm on Discord at discord.video.ninja. Join, support is there. I'm on most of the time. Happy to help. The documentation is at the documentation for VDO.Ninja is at docs.video.ninja. I'll put all the links in the description on this video. All the URL parameters are listed in the documentation. There's hundreds. It's actually a little bit hard to manage. So yeah, drop by the Discord if you can't find what you're looking for. I also have YouTube videos out there. I'll keep adding more. Check those out. Subscribe if you want to get updates. That's all. Hopefully that gives you an introduction into podcasting with VDO.Ninja. Thank you for watching, and take care.